Yeah, I would say that we're
just
looking more
going on
towards an
past.
hour.
I was just going on past performance.
Did Victor say as much, or is just the fact that he's not here?
Victor initially, he said basically if he was going to talk college basketball that he wasn't prepared. I told him that we weren't. So I haven't
No
really
tiene
heard
nada
from
que
him
ver con
since
eso,
then.
por favor.
Okay.
Deme crédito.
So
And
otherwise,
how about Jim? Is he planning on being here or?
No.
Jim is under the weather.
Oh, okay.
So Jim's gonna take a late buy, a Super Bowl buy.
Yes.
I guess he didn't realize that didn't mean not showing up for work, but
right.
It's
like the Buffalo Bills buy.
Andy.
Yeah.
Whenever you want to do MLB, let's do it.
Okay. Trying to think. Probably not next week, but the week after the Super Bowl. That week.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. We'll have a lot more information about some of the free agents also.
Agreed. Okay. Yeah. Very good.
The question we have to answer: who will the Dodgers beat in the World Series?
I don't think so. You know what? I think baseball is such a weird game that obviously they're going to win their division, but I don't think they make the World Series.
Well, they've got such depth; they can overcome injuries.
Like
they've got rosters almost. Their backups could start for half the teams in the majors.
I think baseball is basically like who has the deepest bullpen, and they have the deepest bullpen.
Who has the deepest pockets?
Well, obviously, but it's been that way.
There's a connection there. There's a relationship there.
Like they've got three closers.
Yeah. Innings 7, 8, and 9, like the Yankees used to do.
Like the Yankees used to. And I'm a Yankees fan. That's the only team I root for. So I can't castigate them on that.
It's what Mariano Rivera into the Hall of Fame, that ninth inning. All right.
It's Wetland and Rivera.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I'm surprised more teams haven't tried it. Maybe there's just not that much talent around that can do what they did. But you're asking basically three pitchers to pitch between 12 and 17 pitches an inning every couple of days or every other day.
Absolutely. Oh no, they're low. If they don't win 105 games, disappointment.
The Dodgers,
right?
Yeah, I think that's over under.
When is spring training?
Pitchers and catchers report in about 3 weeks. Usually by the 18th, 20th of February.
Is spring training too long?
Not really.
Maybe for the players might say so, but.
Well, you got to remember that, let's say you move the start of the season back to March 15th. You still got cold weather in a good part of the country.
Last season they did the whole
Tokyo
thing where the first game was like a week.
Yeah, it was a 2-game series. I want to say it was the Dodgers and the Padres or something like that, or maybe a couple other teams.
Dodgers, Padres, and Tokyo.
Yeah.
Do they ever have the major leaguers go up against the Japanese All-Stars?
No.
Why wouldn't they do that?
Years ago they did. Years ago they used to do those tours, like during World War II in the 50s, where they'd after the end of the major league season. Well, I'm talking 40s and the 50s, when after the baseball season, because remember the World Series ended like late September, mid-September, because they played 154 games, and you didn't have playoffs. You just had American League, National League, so you'd have one round of playoffs called the World Series, and then it'd have a bunch of U.S. All-Stars go and play Japanese teams throughout the 1950s. I think into the 1960s maybe as well.
Aren't they like a lot more competitive now? Aren't they?
Japanese? Oh, absolutely.
So why wouldn't that be entertaining?
You mean instead of spring training?
I don't know. At some point, obviously, yeah. I guess you'd have to do it. Well, I mean, it's tough to do it in spring training.
I'm not sure what the Japanese national sport is. I don't know if it's baseball or sumo wrestling.
Well, that would be a difficult choice. How about basketball? Haven't they really started to come on in basketball yet, or no?
Yeah, they have a 5 and under league there. Yes.
They have not. Stop it. They got Rui and the kid from Memphis, who's like a mascot.
Yeah, I've not heard much about Japanese basketball being a huge sport there.
Where is
Certainly
it
not
taken
on
off
the
the
level of
basketball?
European teams.
Where is basketball taken off the most?
I mean,
Well, probably I'd say Europe.
All throughout Europe.
China
Look,
is very big in basketball.
China.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but again, like to actually administer pro prospects, it's Europe.
Yeah.
Like we're in a place where the four of the 8 best players in the NBA are European.
Yeah. Why do you think they played 2 games in France this last weekend with the Pacers and the
Right,
Spurs? Because of Wemby,
Yeah.
who's turned out to be quite the player. Everything that they expected of him, but for any concerns about the competition that he faced, and now he's proven obviously he can fare quite well against NBA or largely U.S. Grown players.
You know what's hilarious about Victor Wembanyama? The best thing that's been uttered is he's 7'3", but he's a sneaky 7'3" because he's actually like 7'7" based on wingspan and all of that.
Yeah.
And he shoots threes and he does all these ridiculous.
Of course, he shoots threes.
Well, yes, you have to shoot threes.
Yeah. It's almost in everyone's contract these days.
Again, we're rolling, so this is great. I'm going to tell you something about basketball. Basically, as I grew up as a child of Trent Tucker being the New York Knicks sharpshooter, and we only had one. Mm-hmm. So in the 1980s, and as things stand now, right now you have 2 brothers. You have Amin and Osar Thompson, who are probably the most ridiculous athletes you've ever seen. And Amin just beat the Celtics, so this isn't a secret. But they can't shoot, but they can play. At the same time, like you're sitting there saying the best shots that my bosses tell me to, not even me, my bosses tell me to take are threes or layups, period. That's analytics.
Well, dunks are more exciting.
Dunks and layups, yes.
Well, at least it'll be here before we know it. Basketball, we'll be talking about that definitely once the Super Bowl is done. So only 2 more weeks. I know, again, Victor's going to get caught up. Jim is doing the same. Matter of fact, Jim and I are going to talk on Friday, and I'm going to ask Jim every Friday to give me 2 games, well, as many games as he likes on Saturday's games. So, because the odds come out, how early do the odds come out on Fridays for the college games?
I'd say mid to late afternoon, maybe between 2 and 5 Pacific. And a lot of them do come up. A lot of them now do originate offshore.
So we'll probably do that pretty much a late afternoon Eastern time, early evening kind of Friday deal to get his picks for Saturday, and so once we start talking basketball here in a couple of weeks. It won't be too long before we're talking baseball as well. But basketball is going to take up a lot of our time once the Super Bowl's over.
Well, keep in mind the college season is basically half over, and the first conference tournaments start probably almost a month from, maybe 5 weeks from today, or 5 weeks from this past Monday.
Yep. So it'll only be 2 or 3 weeks before those tournaments start already. Perfect timing. That's why it's kind of cool with the college basketball season, how it overlaps with football. It's like perfect timing.
Yeah.
Football season's over and we can jump in and we don't get, because you can get a little bit, just like any sport, even though college basketball is only like, 30 games regular season? How many games college basketball?
The regular
season about 33, 34.
Yeah, 33 to 34. But then you have some of those tournaments now where if you're in I think the rule is if you're in a tournament that's not really a tournament to the extent that you know who you're going to play each of the 3 days, that I think counts as one extra game, as opposed to when you have 8 teams reduced to 4 and then you have the consolation games. I think they treat that differently. And then, of course, you've got the conference tournaments, which can add another 3 to 5 games to your schedule. So I think a number of teams that have won or played in the championship game over the last 10 years have played between like 38 to 40 games overall.
But so the regular season is more like 30, 32?
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I think we're ready to talk football.
Well, let's do that. It's football time. Super Bowl's right around the corner. Let's set the table if we can for the show, guys. Kind of prepare for the Super Bowl. Next week, we'll get into a little bit more of the handicapping nuance of the Super Bowl game itself. But the couple of things I want to ask everybody is taking a look back at how they got here. Anything in particular that jumped off the page throughout the course of the playoffs for either of these two Super Bowl teams in the manner in which they got here? And Tony, I'll leave that question to you first. Any thoughts or ideas of what happened to the Chiefs and the Eagles that got them to the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I think I'm in your boat on this, Mark. I love transparency. I think anybody that's watched our shows has observed or that I was terrible on early January games. I have not lost a game since mid-January on football. And Greg DePalma, thank goodness that I did not text you the way I wanted to, because I wanted to bet Ohio State Notre Dame with you because I knew you were on Notre Dame, and I said, why wouldn't I bet $100 with you? But I didn't do that. Bottom line, I'll say this, and I don't like the whole excuse on Buffalo, Kansas City that I think we've seen transpire.
Which one is that?
The referee excuse?
The referee excuse, this nonsense that like the game wasn't there for everybody. Now,
yeah, how about Buffalo calling a better 2-point conversion play than they did?
Right.
We're going to the coach with that, Andy. Okay.
And I'll say this. On first glance, I thought that Josh Allen on that fourth down was clear. I thought he made the fourth down.
I think America thought he made it too,
Yeah. Okay. And a lot of people did.
Well, remember, wasn't it the referee at the top of the screen was standing by where that first down marker was, and the guy at the bottom is the one who's waving, no, he didn't make it. So the referee who was closest to the play had it right.
Correct.
That was overruled by.
So I agree with all of this, but again, we have a lot of nonsense where we're sitting here and like listening to people, and I'm not saying us, I'm saying like general public, listening to people saying that there are scripts to the Super Bowl, that
games are rigged,
that the logo is a tell. Like every Super Bowl logo is a tell all of a sudden.
Oh, we're doing that again this year?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely we are. Greg.
Wasn't that a couple of years ago with the logo being purple indicating something or other, and immediately that team lost?
They've done it
and then all of a sudden you didn't hear it for a couple of years.
No. And they probably would have done it if Buffalo had won. Be like, oh, Buffalo's got it too. But look, the bottom line is this: like, you cannot do this anymore. Like, the game was the game. Josh Allen, look, that guy Ben Solak, and I'm gonna call him out by name because I called him out by name on Twitter, saying, "Oh, well, if he'd only thrown the ball to Shakir on an all-out blitz." On the one blitz that Spagnuolo called that was like really disguised, Like obviously everybody knew he was going to blitz, but this was a specific blitz that came with your corner and all of that. And like Josh Allen made an amazing throw, and Dalton Kincaid dropped it. And it was what it was. If you're going to say that that is scripted
No.
into the NFL script, well, and then you shouldn't be watching the game.
No.
So
you shouldn't be watching it.
Yeah. So my point is this. All right. So we have the Kansas City Chiefs now trying to make history against the Philadelphia Eagles team, and I'll leave it at this. When the matchup became clear, I said, well, this is a pick 'em. Obviously, it's now 1.5. And I'm going to need to see if Chris Jones is healthy. Chris Jones is crying on the sidelines, crying, like openly weeping.
100-1, by the way, to win Super Bowl MVP, Chris Jones. Not a bad possibility.
I said, is he hurt? Is he done? No, he's just emotional. He's just emotional. That's it. He's crying. He's fine. And then Philadelphia's offensive line injuries, like who's going to play on that front five? And obviously, if you're going to play on that front five, you're hopefully healthy, and then Saquon Barkley becomes the most important person and the best player in the Super Bowl. So I have no opinion just yet.
Andy, what was your take on what happened in the championship game we saw last week between the AFC and the NFC? Anything jump out to you between those two games?
Well, I did want to comment on something that we were just talking about with the scripted things and everything. The NFL has to allow on roughing the passer plays or other, let's say, 15-yard spot of foul plays, either eligible for a challenge or for an assisted replay. That's the way that you alleviate any sort of rigging things, because you can't rig how the plays are going to unfold. You can't rig that Kincaid's going to be that close to catching the ball. You can, however, say, and I think it was in the Kansas City-Houston game where they never touched his helmet, and they called the roughing the passer, and it was the two Texan players who collided, and Mahomes' helmet was down below him. You have to allow those kind of penalty plays that are called. I would almost say if a penalty should have been called, they should review that too. For example, a lot of the face mask penalties, there were some that weren't called that were spotted in the replay. That is probably the only way that you could ever clear up almost totally the question of anything going on there, because we've always said for years and years in any sport, you want to fix a game, pay off the officials, because they can throw a flag, call a foul anytime they want. There's almost a holding call that can be made on every play in football, and that's the way to do it. Now, having said that, as far as what stuck out to me, I liked the way that even in defeat, I was still impressed with Washington. I had the Eagles the other day, but I was very impressed with the way Washington played, and but for the turnovers, who knows what happened. In fact, my play in the game was that I decided on the end of the week. Well, I did like the over at the beginning, but I also liked Eagles in first half, and that was a little bit hairy to get there when it was 14-12 under with about 2 minutes to go, and the Eagles scored the touchdown, then got the turnover, scored a touchdown. But my thought there was that Washington had showed really throughout the season that they continue to play hard for 60 minutes, and that if you didn't have those turnovers, that might have been a much more competitive game when it came down the stretch. So I thought that I was very impressed with what Washington did, and I think Washington is going to be, especially because they've got a lot of salary cap maneuverability in the offseason, they will be one of the more popular teams that are priced lower than perhaps they should be based upon how they did this year. Somewhat similar to the feeling that we all had about Detroit coming out of last year. Although I think it was a little bit more obvious that Detroit, because they had been in the playoffs for a couple of years or been close and made great strong progress, they were expected to be a playoff team. Washington was not this year, but I think next year they'll probably be in that. Well, again, let's see what the division looks like with Green Bay and Minnesota, and who knows what will happen in Chicago. But so I was impressed with that. I liked the way that Philadelphia called its game plan. I think I mentioned last week that they didn't really need to use Hurts in that wild card game against Green Bay, and then the game the following week against the Rams, and they opened Hurts up a little bit more, and we saw how effective it was. In fact, I heard one of the commentators saying that what the Eagles should do, because we didn't want him reading on the sideline, is get A.J. Brown involved early. Well, he said we should get him involved in every series every drive today, every series, we got to get AJ Brown involved, and they basically did it, except for the first drive. And that's only because Barkley scored on the first play from scrimmage. So I thought they made good use of the receivers, good use of Hurts, and I think that that's going to make it a little bit more difficult because Hurts certainly looks a lot healthier, and we don't know what's going to happen, but he's going to be even healthier with the 2 weeks with the knee situation. That's going to make it more difficult for Kansas City to prepare.
That's Andy Iskoe, publisher of TheLogicalApproach.com, and his Super Bowl newsletter is an absolute must-read, guys. If you didn't catch it last year, you missed out on War and Peace, and it was a lot of war and a lot of peace. Over 9,700 words, Andy, devoted to the Super Bowl write-up. 9,700 words.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Thesis. 6,000 words on Super Bowl props. You want to get your hands on this for sure.
That's
Andy
the one that I said anyone who sends me an email, I've already gotten some email requests for it, to send me an email. I'll just send them a copy of it so they get an idea of what we do. And don't think, by the way, that every newsletter I publish during the season is 15,000 words.
No, I don't think it's going to. I'm going to bet no on that. I'll bet the way under on that, okay?
Yeah. But yeah, logical7@cox.net is the
logical7@coxnet.com. Make sure you
.net.
send that email to Andy, and he'll get you that newsletter in your hands. You're going to really
probably
love
be
it.
next. Yeah, probably be next Wednesday or Thursday, because I do spend a lot of time going over the props and I know that I think we're going to have a prop discussion a little bit later in the show, or maybe it's part of the 60-second thing that I'm prepared for. But a lot of the props will start coming now. Offshore, they already have a lot. The ones in Vegas, they had some generic ones already available, like the safety and things like that. They'll generally come out around Thursday night to Friday, and usually by the weekend, a lot of the major sportsbooks will have their packets ready, and we'll be able to go through them. And one thing I will say, in fact, if I can find it, I can give we can hold it to the next week. I have like a little primer on what to look for when you're doing props, how to shop around and be important. That be very careful of the wording, because props that look very similar might indeed, a little and or an or a little punctuation mark might make a big difference in how that prop is actually graded.
Well, like I mentioned, Andy's Super Bowl newsletter will be available probably next Thursday. Our Playbook football Super Bowl newsletter guide will be available this Thursday. So get yourselves ready. A lot of good handicapping winning information is to be found in both of those football newsletters. Greg DePalma, what did you think about the championship football game round that we saw? Anything stood out to you that you think could use moving forward into the Super Bowl?
Actually, I thought it was pretty calm. And should have been mostly calm as far as the airwaves were concerned on Sunday night and Monday. I know that you're going to get the average fan is still going to be real critical about anything, including whether or not the Chiefs are getting calls or Josh Allen can't get first down on tush pushes or whatever the case may be. But in general, I thought it was a pretty quiet kind of couple of games. The second game was very exciting. The first game was hard to watch because, as you said, Andy, Washington did a really good job of coming back and making it a game. And every single time they came back to make it a game and had the possession to try to tie it, they turned the ball over. And it was just really, I can imagine how disheartening that must have been for Washington fans. But once again, it just shows you how difficult it is, even for a quarterback like Jaden Daniels as a rookie, to make the Super Bowl. And here's I think one of the reasons why I think that we lose sight of too, it's not just because the quarterback needs to be great, but normally if you're a rookie quarterback on a team and you're starting, normally that team isn't very good. That's the reason why you're a starting quarterback. That hasn't been the case, of course, with some teams like with the Jets or say with a couple of other teams. But this one, I'm sorry, but you take Jaden Daniels off of their team, and they're still probably just a 4 or 5 win team. I will say, though, Terry McLaurin has turned into now one of the better receivers in football because he's got a quarterback throwing him the football. It just shows you how important it is to have such a thing. But yeah, I talked about this with Jim the other day. It is what it is. I've been doing this for so long, like you guys, but I can't not. I kind of feel like over the next week and a half, we're going to be talking about this, that, these angles, these things, this, and it's like the only angle that you think that I believe that needs to be discussed is the Kansas City Chiefs do not lose these games. That's it. So if you don't take the Chiefs, I think you're crazy. Good luck. Maybe you'll win, and maybe that's possible. The percentages are way, way low that will take place. It'll probably be a close game, but the Chiefs will find a way because they always do. And I will say that I've learned this. Because I learned a lesson in the Tom Brady Belichick days. You just keep taking Brady and Belichick in all the big games, and 80 to 90% of the time, you're going to cash your check. I've learned the same thing with Mahomes and the Chiefs. And and I think that that's obviously the way to go. But I think the biggest story is going to be what happens after the game. Does Andy Reid stay in Kansas City, or does he decide, win or lose, that it's time for him to hang it up? And if that happens, what happens to the Kansas City Chiefs?
I thought you were going to say, does Travis Kelce propose to Taylor Swift? I thought that was.
I think there's going to be. I think there's a prop on that one. Actually,
let's go there.
Will he propose on the victory stand if indeed there would? But I was going to mention one thing about what Greg was saying. That is, Philadelphia has an opportunity to do something that probably has never been done before and might never be done again because the situation may not arise. What was it, 7-8 years ago? They beat the dynasty of the 2000s and 2000 teens in the Patriots. Now they have an opportunity to beat the shorter-term dynasty of the Kansas City Chiefs, which would be quite an achievement. But now, Greg, did you consider the birthday factor? You've heard about that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have not.
Yeah, okay.
A double Philly birthday factor.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley's birthday is February 9th, and Cooper DeJean's birthday is February 9th. But it doesn't end there. What's Barkley's number is 26. DeJean's number is 33. What do those numbers add up to?
The final score of the game.
No, 59. What's the Super Bowl number? 59.
I'm going to say 59. I thought you were going to lead to the final score of the game. That Greg has let the cat out of the bag for his
30. Okay, if you want to go that way, 33-26. There you go. There's the final score.
Andy, links.
What's that?
It's Super Bowl links.
Well, yeah, if you do it in Roman numerals, yeah.
Right, but it's the links. So,
and the question is, who will get the last licks in the game, the last score?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look,
well, we were going over this on Monday, Mark, Jim and I know Jim, and it's good. Look, I like it whenever we can have a nice debate, and if I take one side, he'll take another. But I just, because I was saying sort of the same thing, and then he was trying to come back with the Philadelphia Eagles thing and trying to get the Philadelphia Eagles side, like if actually that he's seriously considering taking them, and I basically didn't think that was the case. I was like, come on, Jim. I mean, when it's all said and done, you're going to take the Chiefs. I know you are. I mean,
I'll tell you right now, Jim will not take the Chiefs.
Really?
I know him inside and out. He will not be on the Chiefs.
And by the way,
why would that be?
Anyone who wants to bet the Chiefs, they have no excuses that they have to offer. Well, this and that. They're the Chiefs. They've been here. They're looking to win their fourth Super Bowl in the last 6 years. I think they're 3-1.
The bottom line is, if you're taking Philly, you have the better offensive line. Everybody thinks that offensive line, and me included, so don't take this as misguided. Offensive lines win football games. The Philadelphia Eagles have the better offensive line.
I think they also said, I saw it, I think, on Good Morning Football this morning, only 2 teams have won the Super Bowl if they led the league in rushing offense and total defense. That was the 92 Cowboys with Emmitt Smith and the great defense and Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin. And the Eagles this year had I think they had the second best rushing, so maybe it was a different.
Baltimore was number one.
Yeah, right. Baltimore was number one by a little bit, but they had the number one, overall defense. I think the Eagles.
What Philadelphia does have is the better offense and the better defense in the same game, which is a little bit surprising. I don't think people would realize that. They think
only thing is they don't have Steve Spagnuolo, who could be the first assistant coach or maybe the second assistant coach to make the Hall of Fame.
Or if he's allowed to be the 12th man on the field, yeah, I understand.
Well, Jim always talks about, when he goes over his games, he'll go with if the team has the better quarterback and the better head coach, then those are the better teams. So, so what do you think his angle is going to be then? There's got to be an angle to it. Why you think he's possibly going to go with the Eagles?
Well, it's going to be a little bit of what I was going to share. What I took out of the championship games, in my take, is maybe the obvious, you might want to say, but I think the obvious applies perhaps in a football game like this. But the Eagles are a rush monster, and the Chiefs have got to put a thumb on that dike if they want to stop the Philadelphia Eagle rushing offense. In the 3 playoff games that they've played, Philadelphia's rushed for 279, 285, and 169 yards. And you're looking at a Kansas City defense here, guys, or a team that's been out-yarded and outgained in each of their last 3 football games in a row, going up against the number 1 defense in the National Football League in Philadelphia. You've also got a Chiefs offense that's really stagnant, if you will. I'm going to throw and tell you they've averaged 225 yards a game in their last 3 games, but one of those was that phony Denver no-show where nobody played, so you can throw that sucker out there and say they've averaged about 300 yards a game. That's sort of what I took out of the championship game portion part of this, but I'm not going to get to my side of it because I'm still not finished writing the newsletter, and we'll get to that in just a little bit here. But I think there's what I love about Super Bowls and what I love about good teams in Super Bowls is when you can make cases for both sides, you pretty much have a Super Bowl that you'll want to watch. And I think we're going to have a Super Bowl that everybody's going to want to watch this season here.
By the way, it'll be very hard to match the Super Bowl 2 years ago that these 2 teams played, and it was 38-35 on a last field goal by KC.
Yeah,
if we get a game like that, you know.
We had overtime last year.
2 things real quick. All right, 1, we have an Eagles and Chiefs Super Bowl where both teams are hated. Obviously, the Chiefs way more than the Eagles. I believe that this will be the highest watched Super Bowl of all time for a number of reasons. And I really enjoyed Mark Lawrence waxing poetic on Kendrick Lamar the other day because it told me some things that I knew, but I didn't really know. And then I'm a huge Kendrick Lamar fan. So that was awesome. I said, I didn't know you had that in you, brother. I wasn't familiar with the game.
Well, you got another reason to watch there, Tone. Another reason, yeah. Your guy. That's really cool.
I was going to say that the intro sentence in my newsletter, the Super Bowl, basically sums it up nicely. It's called the Andy Reid Bowl 2.0.
Yes.
Winningest coach in the history of both franchises.
Of both franchises, yes, sir.
Which is pretty amazing.
Who's the winningest coach in the National Football League in their first 4 years with the football team?
Is it Sirianni?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, wow.
He's won 53 games. That's one more than George Seifert won with the 49ers. And he's still got a chance to up that one by one as well. So here's a guy
it is a longer season now.
It is a longer season, but he doesn't get a lot of love. That's for sure. Andy gets.
No, I mean, I honestly think if they started 2-2 this year, he was gone.
And if they lose the Super Bowl and they start out 1-3 next year, the rumors are going to come back out again that he's on a short leash.
Right, I would agree with that.
Remember, we always hear about the Super Bowl jinx for the loser. Keep in mind that when they lost to the Chiefs 2 years ago, what were they, 10-1 last year before they collapsed? So, be a little bit aware of, whoever loses this game could still get off to a good start. And what we had in Philadelphia last year was the disagreements, the contentions between Hurts and Sirianni that really set the stage for the downhill finish over those last 7 games. I think it was the 1-6 finish.
Even the other day was Hurts said he let me out of my straitjacket. Kind of said in jest, but at the same time, some truth to every joke.
I think it's going to be interesting again, as I said before. What does Andy Reid do? Because, I mean, if you win 3 straight Super Bowls at this point in his career, unless you feel like coming back for another 3 or 4 years, that's fine. But if he's at this point where he's like, well, I don't know, year to year, well, if you win your 3rd straight, just go. Just leave.
That's another thing I wanted to react to. Is this an opinion? Because I haven't heard of Andy Reid wanting to go away. And
we've been hearing this for 3 years now.
That's
what I'm saying. It could be another 3 or 4 years.
I can't imagine that guy wants to do anything but what he does. He does the fumble Ruski nonsense commercial, but at the same time, like I would never expect to see him on ESPN. I would never expect him, other than being a head coach, to do what he does. Obviously, we know of some of the tragedies that he's had in his personal life with his sons. I just think that guy's going to coach until he's 75 years old.
I think that I kind of, not knowing his inner thinking, it would be hard to say. You know, Elway went out after the back-to-back Super Bowls, but he was towards the end of his career, and he's not a coach. On the other hand, if you have a chance to set a record and then extend that record the following year with a 4th straight Super Bowl, something that may, you know, look, Buffalo's the only team to have made it to 4 straight Super Bowls, regardless of winning or losing. Now we're talking about winning 4 straight Super Bowls. I think he would find that a very attractive possibility that he couldn't pass up.
You guys, I got to share this with you because I'm going to probably put this in the coffee club over the Super Bowl weekend. And there was a quote that I came across about the Philadelphia Eagle fans, and Tony alluded to the fact about how rough they are in Sirianni. If he started 2-2, he might have been gone. You know, that's how rough the fans are there. But this quote kind of says it all about about the Philadelphia Eagles football fans, if you will. And it says, all told, Philadelphia stadiums house the most monstrous collection of humanity outside of the federal penal system. That's the Philadelphia Eagle football fan.
That makes me want to go to a game in Philly.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. But I did it back when things were a little bit different. But I thought you were going to say that the Philadelphia Eagles don't care about what have you done lately, meaning like your last game. What did you do on your last possession?
You're exactly right. And it had better not have been a turnover, you know.
Right.
And speaking of last possession, I get the idea that we're going to probably have one of those games because it's been great, really. It's the one thing the Chiefs have done is that they get into these big Super Bowl games and they make it very interesting. You know, it's not like they just blow out everybody like the San Francisco 49ers used to when they were in the Super Bowl in those days. They're in these, and that's what makes them so tough to bet against. Because they're constantly coming up with the big play at the right time in the biggest games, including the Super Bowl. And it's so hard to predict when that time is going to come to an end. Because like you said, if Andy Reid stays coaching, which is probably going to happen, say for the next, 3 or 4 years, at some point they're going to lose. At some point, they're going to lose the big playoff game or the big Super Bowl. But when is that going to be? And by the way, if they lose the Super Bowl, will they encounter a Super Bowl jinx themselves?
By the way, I was over at South Point yesterday, and they have just a handful of their props out. One of them, will either team win the game by exactly 3 points? Minus 800 on the no, plus 550 on the yes. What's been the final margin in each of the last 3 Super Bowls? 3.
Exactly 3. That's a cool prop. I mean, I could definitely see throwing pizza money on that.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way.
Involved in it.
It was kind of like the safety prop that hit 3 years in a row, and most people, the so-called sharps, would always make a case mathematically for the no. You know, there just aren't safeties, and those were priced at like minus 1,300. So if you had bet the no for those 3 years, you're down 3,900, and you take you 39 Super Bowls just to get even on that prop. Well, the same thing here. If you were betting the yes for the 3 points, and whether, you know, just as a modest bet, you know, you're already up about 14, 15 units over the past 3 years. And those who bet the no for that number, you know, they're down 20-something units.
I would imagine that it's because of Prize Picks and Underdog and even DraftKings and FanDuel, that the fact that we have player props available now, like immediately, 3 hours after the game, it's because of that. But I would say that the easiest prop ever, and I made a lot of money on it this past week, was Patrick Mahomes over 23 and a half yards. I saw him at both. Okay, I got 23 and a half. I put out 22 and a half because that was the universal number, but to me it was 23 and a half. Look, Mahomes runs in big games, and he did not run for whatever reason in the regular season game against Buffalo. But we saw it in the Super Bowl in overtime. He called his own number. That big fourth down that they actually ran the same play on a fourth down in this game against Buffalo was Mahomes to the right, called his own number, bam. I can't imagine riding the under on a Patrick Mahomes rushing prop. And I would say to, like, I don't have any opinion on the winner yet, maybe next week on any, but Patrick Mahomes over his rushing prop, guaranteed.
What did he do in the last Super Bowl, like 2 years ago against the Eagles? And by the way, that's another thing you may want to take a look at and see what differences are between the rosters of the teams from the 2 years. But these teams just played 2 years ago, and they had several hundred props involving the players and the teams in that game. So don't necessarily that you can rely on it, but you might say, okay, this is the number for Kelsey for yards or receptions. What was it 2 years ago, and what happened? And then maybe
I love that, Andy. That's what you're ferreting out value. You're looking for something that's changed, and you ask yourself, why has it changed so dramatically? Exactly right. Yeah, that's a real good point. People to look at. Real good point. One other thing, guys. I'm going to say, Greg, I'm going to turn this over to you and Andy about what we could say about the Super Bowl preview coming up here. That we got. There's things that we like and we didn't like about this particular matchup here. I'm going to say that what I like about this matchup coming up here is the fact that this has got a real flavor and a real feel to it, reminiscent about the Super Bowl games of old, where defense and running the football just dictated the winning team. It's kind of a Bill Parcells type Super Bowl heaven that I think we're about to see here in this football game here. Kansas City's lack of offense and Philadelphia's, you know what they're going to do, come and stop us type of an approach. The thing that I don't like about this particular Super Bowl is, and this might be a little bit superfluous, but this is the 30-second commercials are now up to an all-time high of $8 million for a 30-second commercial. It's like, you talk about inflation and where has everything gone? Look at the cost of a 30-second ad in the Super Bowl now, $8 million. It's like absolutely ridiculous.
And they're not getting any better.
No, they're not getting any.
You would think that they
But
get
Mark.
You have a whole year to come up with one commercial.
Mark,
you can't do it.
We're coming off the most annoying, wherever you stand, election of all time. So
yes.
All right. So therefore, it's par for the course. And yes, absolutely, we're going to see. Hopefully, like I think most people are in like a lot of the casuals. They're probably not watching us, but a lot of the casuals are into let's get the most entertaining commercials. Already, we've seen the Pillsbury Doughboy dancing.
Yep.
Have you seen that commercial? It's coming up.
Nice.
So it's like coming Super Bowl. They're gonna, and then they show at the end. This is a commercial. Okay, entertain me. Just entertain me. I'm not gonna bitch about it. Just entertain.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that I agree. The problem is that you get maybe 2 or 3 commercials when it's done where you go, all right, it's pretty entertaining, but there's like 50 of them.
Oh,
and 90% of them you're looking at and you're like, you spent all this money on this? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. You would think in today's day and age with what you have available to you now, and you would think if you could spend that much money on a commercial, you're going to spend a lot of money on production, and that's the best that you can do.
Sometimes if it's a bad commercial, it sometimes stands out and it reaches exactly the desire of the advertiser. Get them talking about it.
It's sort of like publicity, guys. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's publicity. And, that's what they're buying the time for is, that publicity, just to get their name out there. And whether it's be spoken about in good terms or bad terms, at least they're talking about their name and their product. So, there's a reason they're spending $8 million for a 30-second commercial. The other thing that I don't like about the Super Bowl, whether it's this one or all the other Super Bowls, is the fact that we have to get ready for a post-Super Bowl depression, because it's going to be the end of football season for quite a while here. And once we turn the TV off after that Super Bowl, it's a little bit depressing, I have to say.
You know what you know why that's probably one of the main reasons why I loved working with our lads. And it's one of the main reasons why I love football is the fact that it actually doesn't stop for me at all. Is that I actually have just as much fun, probably because my team has sucked and hasn't made the playoffs in 16 years. So I'm used to looking at the offseason as, hey, this is where I get hope in the offseason, because you can't lose games in the offseason. All you can do is just hope that your team's going to hire the right coaches and bring in the right players and draft the right players. And that's what's so fun about going over the draft. And you have Senior Bowl week this week when everybody else is waiting for the Super Bowl, and you get to look at the players of tomorrow. So yeah, it's and then once the Super Bowl is over, it's only a few weeks after that everybody starts gearing up for free agency
and the combine.
And then you got the combine at the end of February, leading into free agency in the beginning of March, and then it leads into the draft, and it
leads into the schedule release and the posting of season win totals for the places that haven't done it yet. And all of a sudden, you're at training camp in mid-July.
And the announcement of the next spring football league. Yes, go ahead.
Greg DePalma gets to like give unbridled attention to the WNBA, which I know he enjoys.
Yeah, that'll be happening not very soon, but yes.
Greg has 6 months to say the Jets are unbeaten.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I'm actually pretty excited about their hire. So
you like Aaron Gordon?
Well, how can I not? I'm a Jet fan.
Yeah, but you like another defensive head coach?
Yeah,
I didn't really like that, but a lot's going to depend, of course, on who he hires an offensive coordinator. But what I like is exactly what he said. He said that I am not a defensive coach being hired. I am going to be a
right.
CEO.
Yeah, I saw that,
and that's important because that's the difference in you're going to be a defensive guy who knows nothing about offense. He actually come out and said it. He goes, I spend as much time with the offense as I do with the defense. And he didn't say I'm going to spend as much time. He says I have spent. So that means he's already has experience spending time in the offensive room, because that's what you should do anyway. I think if you're a defensive guy, to find out exactly how offenses are run.
Exactly.
And so I think he's done a really good
job.
He said that
well before the hiring, interview process.
Yeah. And keep in mind, he has a great
that label is what he was doing. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
What was that, Mark?
I said he was attempting to dispel the label of being a defensive hire as a coach. Yes.
And he also has a great tree behind him. I mean, not just Bill Parcells. I mean, Sean Payton, all the way, Campbell, all the way down the line. I mean, he has been in a lot of great coaches' rooms, locker rooms.
Let me ask you this, Greg. Would you have liked to have seen the Jets at least interview and consider Mike McCarthy?
The only reason I would have thought that would have made sense is obviously with Aaron Rodgers and the fact that they did interview him, and we all thought that he was going to get the job until they hired Robert Saleh. So I thought I was already gearing up for the possibility. And
remember, he did have those 12-5 seasons with Dallas. It's not like he was a failure with the Cowboys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Look at the quarterbacks he had with them, Andy. That's the reason he had those 12-5 seasons.
Yeah.
So I would have been okay with it, but that just never got going.
I just saw that he pulled out of the New Orleans Saints search, McCarthy.
Yeah, he probably just needs to
take a year off. Yeah.
Yeah. And good for him. I mean, who really wants a New Orleans job anyway?
He can be strapped with all that
salary
money.
cap. What, 52 million over, I think.
Right.
And you don't have a quarterback yet. I mean, yeah, that's not a very enticing job. So I can imagine that's I don't know who's going to get that job, but I mean, I know they were still talking to that special teams coordinator, the guy who was the interim coach.
Rizzi, right?
Yeah, which would be a really I think the fans. I know he's a charismatic kind of guy, but and John Harbaugh was very successful, but I don't know. I think that would be one of those deals where we don't have anybody else to hire, so let's get. I thought Joe Brady was choice.
I thought Joe Brady would be an ideal candidate, but he's pulled himself out. He's staying apparently with Buffalo.
Looks like it's Weaver or Moore.
And that'll change a lot for the Dolphins. Speaking with Jason Sarney, who covers the Dolphins over at Athlon.
Yeah, Weaver will be a big loss, right?
Yeah, that would be big because a lot of people believe, I know Miami fans believe, that why it's important too is if something does happen, say next year, and they get off to a slow start, well, the Dolphins might just fire the coach. And if they fire the coach and Weaver's not there, it could really the whole franchise back, but if Weaver's there, it gives them, fans would feel a lot more comfortable that if they fire the head coach, because again, I say this because apparently that's something that Dolphin fans believe is very possible, that, you know, his leash is really short, the head coach over there, McDaniel.
Yeah, because you don't know what's going on with Tyreek Hill. I personally think McDaniel is not a good coach. He gets out-coached more often than he doesn't, especially in the second half of football games. And I think people are getting just a little bit sick and tired of watching him saunter up and down the sidelines wearing these kids' clothing from a Salvation Army store. It's just, he's not good for the look of the Miami football program, is what he's not.
Yeah, they've unfortunately, or fortunately, but I, of course, it's unfortunately, have had the same people in charge for just too long. I mean, Greer has been with the organization for far too long. It's sort of like, it's like Jason Garrett, Jerry Jones ×2. That's what's going on with Greer and Ross. I mean, they're just tied to the hip for like 16 years now together.
Well,
So,
I mean, to piggyback on that, it's kind of like what we just saw with Shad Khan and Trent Baalke. And then all of a sudden, like, all right, we're going to lose our guy because our GM is terrible. And now I have to see it that somebody doesn't want to come work for me because the guy that I trust is absolutely not somebody that anybody wants to work with. Fine, I'll get rid of him. Maybe that comes to pass with Miami.
I think that was that situation to me for Jacksonville. I think everything, how they handled it, you can say what you want about the owner, fine. It was a little bit more, that's more of a Tampa story. Is that say what you want about handshake agreements or anything like that, but you got to grow up.
But I don't think it's a Tampa story. I think honestly, yeah. Look, he didn't sign his contract, so that's fine. Like a lot of people, yeah. You meant from that point of view, Greg, you're absolutely right in terms of. I think Tampa's bitching and probably has a legitimate beef. But if you didn't get his signature on the contract,
no,
and then Jacksonville says, all right, well, we want you, and the reason you don't want us is now
gone. Yep. That's what I'm saying. I think I can understand Tampa Bay fans if they're angry at Cohen and hearing that he shook their hands and all this, but you got to grow up. It's a big boys world. And like you said, Tony, if you don't have it signing on the dotted line, because some of these coaches would just renew a contract anyway if they signed it, and what the other team pay compensation for it. So yeah.
Well, it's the same situation. What happened if while the contract wasn't signed, the Tampa Bay Bucks said, "Hey, we need to get that position in place. We're going to sign someone else," and Baalke doesn't resign, and then the guy's out of his Tampa Bay job, and he's got nothing to look forward to. What would the reaction be there? You know, if you don't sign the contract, you leave yourself open to that possibility.
Yeah, and it wasn't that long, so Tampa Bay doesn't have to worry about, well, now you've left us hanging. We have to find a guy. Well, it was only a couple of days. So Tampa Bay will definitely, I don't even know. They haven't filled that position yet, have they?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't think so. And that's going to be big because of Baker. Because Baker, let's keep in mind, he worked with Cohen with the Rams, and a lot of people believe that that's exactly the beginning of him turning things around. And then Cohen comes over to Tampa, and everything is great with Baker, and now Cohen's gone. So how does this affect Baker? That's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Well, guys, let's get to finishing up what we like and what we don't like about these pairings here. I sort of kicked it off here. I'm going to throw it to you, Tony. What do you like and what don't you like about the pairings we got in Super Bowl 59?
I mean, look, I won't have what I don't like, because I think these are the best teams in their respective conferences. And again, I will say to anybody that says, well, Kansas City was underwhelming, they've lost one game and they just beat the one team that beat them. So please stop. Please stop. And then as far as what I do like, I think that you have the game's top offensive line in Philadelphia. Hopefully they're healthy, because that's honestly going to make the difference for me. I don't have a pick yet. If Philly goes in to this game with an offensive line that I'm confident in, I believe I will take them. If not, then I will ride with Kansas City's experience, because I do believe that means a lot. I think that what we've seen from the Eagles just recently, within the last 5 weeks, I mean, I think I wrote something, and I was dead wrong, but right in front of this NFC Championship, that I don't believe that Jalen Hurts had thrown for over 140 yards in all but one game in 5 weeks, and then he threw for two something coming up just recently. So, and then he made that straitjacket comment. So very clearly, it was procedural. And then, like, I won't overblow the whole AJ Brown thing, where AJ Brown was upset with him. Clearly, Devontae Smith is one of the best slot receivers in football. Clearly, Saquon Barkley is the best running back in football. And behind that offensive line, I mean, they're going to be able to get a lot accomplished. So, again, I don't have a play yet. I do have a lean towards the over. I had it 51.5. I believe it opened 48.5, 49. Just a wonderful matchup that I hope lives up to billing. That's it for right now. Next week I'll have a more concrete opinion.
Andy, how about you, bud? Anything you see or like or don't like about what's on store for us for Super Bowl 59?
Well, I thought any of the possible matchups would have been intriguing. Obviously, if Washington made it to the Super Bowl, you've got a rookie quarterback doing so, not just trying to win a Super Bowl as a rookie, but the first rookie quarterback to start a Super Bowl. That would have been intriguing. And obviously, if they were playing, well, whether it was Washington or Philadelphia, it would be an exciting game. If it's Washington, you got Jaden Daniels in there trying to prevent a three-peat. Or you have Philadelphia, who's trying to prevent a three-peat, and was the victim in the first of the three Super Bowls in that 3-point game. Now, if you had Buffalo there, that's a compelling story, regardless of whether they would be facing Washington or Philadelphia, to the extent that, okay, it's been 30-something years, and they finally have an opportunity to break that 4-game 0-for-4 in Super Bowls with an opportunity with, the best quarterback they had since then in Jim Kelly. So that would have been an interesting matchup for Buffalo rather. And if it happened to be against Washington was one of the teams that beat Buffalo during that 4-year run. And of course, if it's Kansas City going up against Philadelphia, as I mentioned, that's the rematch, and going up against Washington, that might have been well, it would have again been intriguing, as I mentioned. A rookie trying to end a three-peat. So any of the 4 matchups were going to be okay for me. I happen to like the matchup we got because you do have a team in Kansas City going to make history, and Philadelphia was one of the teams. San Francisco last year, obviously in overtime, was the other in the first 2 games. So the first 2 Super Bowls. So Kansas City, now involved. Well, I think the 3-point game before, I think, was Rams and Cincinnati. I want to say 24-21 may have been the one before the Kansas City Philly game. So this game, if it lives up to billing, and again, these teams, for the most part, with the exception of Washington, I think going into last week, none of the teams had a turnover in the playoff game. And last week, Kansas City had 1, and I don't think Philadelphia had any. So you're getting teams that have been playing clean football basically throughout the postseason, which is what you like to see.
Good points. Good observations. I like that. And Greg, any thoughts from you about this year's matchup?
Well, I think I think hedging your bet is something that I've learned a long time ago, and constantly picking the Chiefs because they're just impossible to bet against is a great hedge in my mind. Not even in my mind. It is for me because I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'm like everybody else. I'm sick of the Chiefs being in the Super Bowl, but if they're going to be there, I might as well make money off of it. So that's basically the way I think about it. So if they lose, I lose money, but at least they lost. I mean, move on already. But one of the things that I am going to also be happy about if the Eagles win is that if they win, it's going to be clearly the main reason is Barkley. And because of that, I think even if they don't win, I think we have finally gotten back to where now general managers understand the importance of running the football. Head coaches understand it now. I think this phase we were going through for 10 years, whatever it was, is over. I think we're going to go back to running the football. There's going to be a great running back class. You're going to see every team in the NFL should have a good running back in their stable. And I think that's what we're headed towards, especially if you can't find a franchise quarterback. You better find a good running game. So I think that's really something I'm looking forward to. And then on the negative side, it's just the fact that, again, here we are. It's the Chiefs and the Eagles. I'm like everyone else. I mean, when I understand Joe Burrow had such a bad defense this year, but he'll be back, and he's somebody that could cause damage in the postseason. But it's just at some point, hopefully, because we're in this rut, and we knew we were going to get there about 15 years ago when we were going. At some point, Drew Brees and Tom Brady and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, they're all going to retire. And what's going to happen? Well, this is what's happened. We're waiting now for the next group of quarterbacks, and they are coming. There's some nice young quarterbacks in the league besides Jaden Daniels. There's a wave of quarterbacks that'll be here in a couple of years. So it might take us a few more years, but until I think we get those really good quarterbacks in the system, I don't know how much longer we're going to have to deal with these number 1 seeds, number 2 seeds in the Super Bowl every year.
I'm going to ask you guys a question real quick, because outside of Greg, you guys are all significantly older than me. When Joe Montana did what he did, was there this outcry that basically mirrors what we're at with Mahomes, this Mahomes fatigue? Because I remember Steve Young obviously coming right after him, but that was such a different situation. But Montana was Montana, and obviously we had Terry Bradshaw before that, so I'll even open that to you guys there. But I don't remember Jim Kelly fatigue. I don't remember Joe Montana fatigue. Like, is this a new thing? What do you guys opine on that?
I think, number one, and I have another point to make. I think a lot of it has to do, the internet wasn't around back then, so you didn't have the widespread dissemination of information and whining and complaining and all that. But I did want to mention something that I have not done the research. I'm sure at some point we'll read something this week. What have there been 8 teams that have tried to go for 3 in a row, and they've all failed. And I want to go back and find out, or someone will probably do it, why those teams that had an opportunity to win a 3rd straight Super Bowl failed. Because it always makes sense that, well, if they've won 2 in a row, they're that good, they should be able to win 3. Yet it's not happened. And why, given those 8 previous results, why would we think Kansas City would be the team? Other than, let's say, the Patriots had a couple of opportunities, I believe, to win back-to-back, and they didn't. So I'd be interested to find
Andy,
out.
I'm going to answer your question on that, okay? A little bit here, because I did that by putting it in the newsletter, and I just researched this last night. Those 8 teams that have won back-to-back, 2 of the 8 teams never made the playoffs the next year. So that left 6 of those teams to go back into the playoffs. None of those 6 teams made it back to the Super Bowl. Right. They were either beating the wild card, the divisional, or the championship round. Kansas City is the first team to make it back to the Super Bowl. So does that make them special? Probably. I'd say that's something they're doing, something nobody else has ever done. But those 6 teams that made it back to the playoffs, all 6 of them, when they lost their playoff game, failed to cover the spread.
And the other thing, I think, when you talk about whether or not the Chiefs can pull this off is that at least they're in the game, and also they don't have like a rash of injuries or anything like that. You can say what you want about, are they good enough at tackle? That's understood. There's no more like issues with them. So it really will be interesting to see if a team that has clearly been they're the dynasty team, winning back-to-back, chance to win the 3rd without any sort of major issues behind them. It just is going to make it that much even harder for the Eagles to pull this off, because not just they're a good team, obviously, but to do it against that team, wow. The only thing I can think of is let's say Andy Reid's around for 5 or 6 years and the Chiefs win 2 or 3 more Super Bowls over the next 5 years. Well, then you can look back and go, well, you see, sort of like Brady and Belichick, there were losses in the Super Bowl. So we can look back at it. We'll look at their wins and their losses, but just while we're doing it in the moment, it's so hard to bet against them when they just always find a way to win. And they're there again with the chance. What are they? Patrick Mahomes is 9-0 in these situations, I believe, Mark?
Yeah, he's won 9 straight playoff games. So
playoff games. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'll ask 2 more questions.
That was a great question you asked, though, Tony, by the way, about the comparison between Joe Montana and Patrick Mahomes. Andy had the perfect answer in that there wasn't internet back then. And even if there were internet back then, I still don't think people would have been squawking as loudly about Montana as they do Mahomes. Maybe it's just too much Mahomes.
I'll ask 2 more questions.
Yes.
All right. So Mahomes being who he is, and I know the answer to this, he's more likable than Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady had Deflategate. Tom Brady, for whatever reason, like Mahomes is, he's not polarizing. He's just a great player. And then the other question I had, so your opinion on that, and then also this is a really good question, I think. Is this Philadelphia Eagles team better than last season's San Francisco 49ers, being that game went to overtime and Greenlaw, a huge defensive player, got injured basically at the opening kickoff?
I think they are better, Tony, and it all starts out with the obvious with Barkley. His running game opens everything up, keeps the defense rested. The defense is the number 1 defense by no default because they're a well-rested defense. They're really talented. So the better defense, better running game, those are those Bill Parcells staples. That's what Philadelphia brings to this game, and that makes them better this year to me than San Francisco was last year.
And
as
I'll
far
add
as
that,
Mahomes and
I'll add
Brady,
that the Kansas City offense is at or possibly a little bit lower than the offense they were at last year. I think the defense is probably on a par with last year's Chiefs defense.
You think, Andy, healthier, like with Hollywood in now and adding Calvin Ridley? You think that's a worse offense than what we saw last year?
No, it's about the same as last year. Okay. I think, and maybe a little bit weaker. Because of some of the injuries that they suffered, but that's all part of the game. But the offensive and defensive numbers overall for the Chiefs are not that much different from last year to this year. So it's a question of, as Mark said, how do you compare the 49ers of last year to the Eagles of this year? And maybe you got Aubrey McCaffrey for San Francisco. How does he compare to Barkley, especially with the pass catching ability of McCaffrey?
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Kansas City has allowed more yards than they've gained this football season here. That's not a characteristic that you usually find about teams that have landed and found their way to the Super Bowl, but it's a Kansas City trait, winning games ugly, playing down to the level, being outstatted, all those good things, yada, yada, yada. So that's not surprising to me. But I think what's a little bit more surprising is how Philadelphia has covered their end of the deal. They've won their yards by an average of 75 yards a game this football season. So that's a combination of their defense and a well-balanced offense, balanced heavily more toward the running game for sure.
What I haven't researched, and I'm obviously it's out there, but I would think that Kansas City's struggles, quote unquote, because they lost 1 game, this season were red zone related. Like I remember Patrick Mahomes throwing picks in the red zone earlier in the season.
His quarterback pressure rating was terrible in the first.
And then settling for 3.
Right.
Like, how have they done in this postseason? I think it's pretty good.
Well, obviously it's going to be good for the past 2 years because they haven't lost a game. And there was a time before these 2 years that Kansas City was a money burner in the playoffs. As good as Mahomes was. Yes, point spread wise, yes. So as good as they were, they didn't beat the money. They didn't win games by a big enough margin per se, but that's all caught up to them here lately with these 1-score games that they've had and failures to cover point spread. So, and we're not even bringing 1-score games into the equation here now because this game is basically in the pickish range, 1.5 pickish range.
Yeah, and keep in mind, there's 2 big differences with the offense with the Chiefs from this year to last year. There's no Rashee Rice, so that's huge. And then also they had a much better running game going in. Now, Pacheco is not the same. Something's off with them. But Hunt has actually been running well for them.
Hunt, much better.
Yeah, so I don't think they lose much now because Hunt's starting to look good. Even Pacheco would be better, last year's version would be better, but Hunt's doing good enough. But not having Rashee Rice in there. Now, look, they have Worthy. He's a dangerous player. He's had a great rookie season. Still, Rice, a little bit better than Rashee Rice. Than Worthy. So I'd look at that. And defensively, no L'Jarius Sneed. And that is a big difference for because he was. Now, look, you saw what happened after Sneed left. He was not good with Tennessee. He played for a few games for the injury. And from what I heard, he wasn't very good at that point anyway. So once again, a player who fits perfectly with one system, one winning system, with one great defensive coach, goes somewhere else, gets the big money, and is not the same player. But that player, L'Jarius Sneed, was a big player for the Chiefs.
Okay, let's put a wrap on this if we can, unless you got another question, Tone.
No, I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you, Greg, for our final spin-off, if you will. That segment, if you will, if you want to go around the horn, and we'll get things wrapped up here.
And since I was around for those days, by the way, Tony, I must say that I think one of the reasons why everybody did not rip on Montana as much is that Montana was like the golden boy. You know, we all loved Joe Montana.
Yeah, he didn't have a rap sheet of any kind. You know,
no, he was just all America's quarterback, and so everybody, and it was San Francisco. It wasn't the Cowboys. It wasn't the Steelers. Everybody was happy to see San Francisco come along and beat the Cowboys, and so they were pro San Francisco.
This was 84 to 89, something like that, right?
Yeah, these were the late 80s, early 90s, I believe.
I was a Giants fan back then. I was a kid, obviously. But
I think it started. I think in the early '80s, didn't it, with Montana and the game against Cincinnati, the Bengals. The first of two.
I'll tell you guys this quick little story. I don't know if I mentioned it before or not in the past. Andy, you may have been with me at the time. I'm not sure, but we were in Vegas for the Superbook weekend, and Joe Montana's son, Nick Montana, was there, and we hooked up, got to be real good friends. He really got on real well with my son because they're the same age and so forth and whatnot.
And,
so anyway,
and Nick is a good friend of Ken Thompson. That's
very
how
good.
The connection was made.
Okay. So we're in my room, and we're talking about his dad. And the question came up about Tom Brady in the comparison to his dad. And he said, I wonder where my dad would have ranked to Tom Brady as far as all-time statistics go. And, you know, I had my computer with me, and so I fired it up, and I had to make a little bit of a set for all the games that Montana started. But it was amazing how, if you look at all of Montana's career starts and all of Tom Brady's career starts, how close and similar they were statistically, those two teams. Montana didn't play as many games as Brady's, and because he didn't have as many passing yards, as many touchdowns, and so forth. But if you divide the amount of games that he did play to the yards and the touchdowns that he got, they were eerily almost similar, almost identical, the two quarterbacks. He was really pleased to hear
about
that.
the rushing contributions of Montana?
I honestly, I didn't even look at that part of it, Andy. I really didn't. You know, we were all talking about his dad. I'm talking about the games he won and he lost, how he did as a favorite, how he did as a dog, you know, things just like that. You know, Brady's so good as a dog because New England was so good as a dog. Montana's so good to say. It was like right out of the Twilight Zone, how close they were.
Well, and Montana played for a Hall of Fame coach that you could argue is right up there amongst the best of all time, and Bill Walsh.
Yep.
And by the way, Andy, yes, they won the Super Bowl, the first one back in '81, and then they started to develop their dynasty actually later in the '80s. They had won 2 Super Bowls by then, but then they had actually a run of 3 seasons where they didn't make the Super Bowl. And it's interesting because after they won their first 2 Super Bowls, they go into that third run. And that was the run, speaking of your Giants, Tony, that was the run where the Giants beat San Francisco in San Francisco. And San Francisco had the lead pretty late in the game. Giants kicked like a late field goal to beat San Francisco in the championship game. Or San Francisco's in the Super Bowl ready, and San Francisco, all they had to do is go to the Super Bowl, and they would have won it. Of course, those were the days when the NFC kicked the ass of the AFC. But that was typical, you know, Bill Parcells winning with Jeff Hostetler. And then that was it for Joe Montana. He wasn't at that point in his career that they felt anymore because that was the old Joe Montana or the young Joe Montana. They would have beat the Giants. But it was like, you know, now it's time to go to Steve Young. But that was another 2-win Super Bowl team that came this close to three-peating. But Bill Parcells and Jeff Hostetler shut the door down in that championship game. So, and then the other thing I also think, remember in the beginning of the season when we were talking about the players voting on the best players in the NFL?
Yes.
And we were all wondering why Patrick Mahomes wasn't at the top of the list.
And
I don't think he's as liked as you think, Tony. I'm telling you, they don't like his. They don't like the way that he does his flops.
But why? I agree. Look, I agree that this is correct. The proof is in the pudding. Like I'm not going to sit there and say that. Like, but all right. So let's watch Patrick Mahomes on every play. Have you ever seen a quarterback that somebody's trying to take him down or do his stupid shit that he does out of bounds, and he like kind of pats him on the back?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Nobody does this.
Sure.
And so I think he tries really hard to be liked.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right, Tony.
So whether
you're right.
But
Sorry for me being an asshole. Yeah.
But it really does.
But it's okay. You try to rip my head off. That's okay.
Yeah. Hey man, I'll do anything it takes to win.
Yep.
And that's what you also love about him.
No, and again, I like.
Isn't that like rubbing it in though? After you've just toyed with a guy, and now you say, "Hey, nice job."
I don't know, because he does it to Max Crosby. Tries to take his head off, just like, "Hey, good to see you, bud." Type of thing. I don't understand it. I really don't get it.
They may not like him, but I think they respect him.
They should. They should.
And the other thing that's remarkable about Mahomes and Chris Jones for crying is that they've won 2 Super Bowls. And you saw the reaction from Mahomes when they beat the Denver Broncos in the regular season, running all over the field. It's like, dude, you've won 2 Super Bowls. What the hell do you care that you just blocked? They blocked a field goal to win a football game mid-season. But that's what you need. You have to have that inner drive of
that's part of the attitude.
Game matters.
That compassion that he has. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very rare, which is why they're who they are.
He's the leader. He's excited. It rubs off on his teammates because they
What's
know how
amazing also, I think, about this particular Chiefs team, like every team is different, but this particular Chiefs team, their wide receiver 1 is Xavier Worthy, who the Bills passed up on, and who all of us, I don't think there's anybody that's even illegitimate analyst said, man, that was a great move to get him in late in the first round. Like the fastest receiver in the draft, and he's going to the Chiefs. Like,
yep, that's exactly what it was, Tony. The fastest receiver in the draft went to the Chiefs. Maybe not,
which
the
is what
biggest,
they needed to replace when they lost, Tyreek Hill.
Yeah. Thank the Buffalo Bills for that.
Yes.
Yes. Very good, Buffalo. You got what you deserve.
Hey, Greg, before we get to this final segment here, I want to remind our listeners out there that if you haven't done so yet, I'm going to remind you that this is ProLine TV. It's back. The Playbook podcast is now part of ProLine TV. Go to prolinetv.net on the internet. The YouTube channel, you can watch all of our Against the Spread podcast there, and a bevy and a host of other sports handicapping podcasts, all at ProLine TV. It's the place to be if you want to get some good, solid handicapping information. And also, while you're here, be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button. We'd love to have you subscribe. No charge to do that. We'll send you notifications of when the new shows are posted. And everybody likes to be liked, so hit that like button if you will.
And we've already have, we have a golf show for handicapping already this week. Our NASCAR show is also available. Daytona 500 the week after the Super Bowl. And our horse racing show will be tomorrow, actually on Thursday. So that's all of our handicapping, including, of course, football here. And then we're going to be slowly turning our attention to college basketball, as we said in the open, and then baseball before you know it. So a lot going on here, and hockey. Don't think that we're not talking hockey, because we are. So a lot going on here on ProLine TV. If there's a really cool sport out there, we're covering it. All right, so let's now go to our 60-second picks. And let's start with Mark. Mark, are you ready to go already?
Yeah, I am ready to go. Let's. I'm going to do a little bit of prop talk here if I can. And I'm going to open it up with my good friend Jay Cornegay. He's the king of the props at the Superbook. He's the one that originated and blew all these props out. He's the guy that the reason we have over 700 and 1,000 props to wager with now, all because of Jay. And there was a time when I was working with USA Today and I was interviewing him, and I asked him, we were doing a Super Bowl article, I asked him, what's your biggest fear with the Super Bowl props? His answer to me was that there'd be a safety. And that was the same year that there was a safety on the first play of the game. I was really surprised that Jay even answered a text after that. He just a little bit prophetic in that sense that he did just that. But there's a prop out there I want people to know about that's won 15 times in a row. It's what team, if you will, that scores last wins the football game? The answer to that is yes. 15 times in a row, you score, you cash the ticket. Watch that prop. You score last, you win the game.
Oh, that was perfect. 1 minute on the nose. And what is the line on that, Mark?
Well, it's a good thing it's 1 minute because it was 120. I would have had to explain it and say it's a little bit costly. Right now, I think last year it opened up at 170. I think it closed at about 280. Because it gets to be so popular. Right now, I think the first one I saw was minus 170 or 180, and I don't know what it is right now. So anybody that does this has to get in early because the word gets out there. It's won 15 in a row. It's a pretty strong prop.
Okay, awesome. All right, next up, Andy, you ready?
Yeah, I'm glad you picked me next because I want to run out and play that prop as soon as possible. Anyway, I'm all set, so I'll do a little 3, 2, 1, begin. I'm actually going to go to the other part of the prop that Mark talked about, and that's how often or will the team that scores first win the game. And in fact, at the South Point, the price on their sheet, which may be changed a little bit now, is the bear with me just a moment here because I have a whole bunch.
You only got 60 seconds, Andy.
Yeah. Okay.
Now you're down to 30.
Maybe I better start.
I think you better start all over again, Andy.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because I'm just okay. Here it is. I've got it. Okay. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to go to the other part of the prop that Mark talked about. I'm going to take a look at the team that scores first. Will that team win the game? And right now at the South Point, it's priced at minus 180 on the yes, plus 160 on the no. If you go back to the early 2000 teens, I think the yes cashed about 6 times in a row. Since then, it's been about 50-50 that the team that scores first does not win the game. So you're getting plus 160 on something that for the last 7 or 8 Super Bowls has been roughly 50. I think it was like 2 yes, 2 no's, 1 yes, 1 no, 1 no, 1 yes, etc. for the last 8 years. So that's a prop that I've been playing just about every year for the last 5 or 6 years. It's sort of replaced my favorite prop for many years, which was, will the first pass for each quarterback be complete or incomplete? For years, you made money betting the incomplete. It's leveled off, and both passes have been complete the last few years. So I've sort of dropped that from my rotation.
All right. Excellent. Andy, appreciate that. We got props on both sides. Whoever scores first and whoever scores last. Okay.
Yeah, you bet the yes on, bet the no on the first, and the yes on the second.
And if you can do that one, here's a good one. So if you could do a parlay, can't you? So you
some
could
places
do the
yes,
plus.
some places no.
So if you can get that, you can do the plus one. Obviously, comes first, which is a good thing. You can take some of that favorite money off then because you've got the plus for the first one. And if you lose the first one, well, then you can go ahead and you got some more time to kind of come up with whatever you want to do. But at least that parlay bet gives you the opportunity to shave some of that heavy money off of Mark's
by the way,
idea.
It's important to keep in mind with a prop like the first team that scores first. Once you know if that bet is going to be a winner or a loser, you can then do some in-game maneuvering as far as being able to get a plus price if you're on the wrong side of that, let's call it a parlay or the two-way bet.
Okay. Tony, are you ready?
Always ready.
Take the floor.
All right, y'all. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get to talk college basketball because obviously I was tuned into my UCF Golden Knights. Actually, they're not the Golden Knights anymore. They're the Knights. But losing to Kansas yesterday was a golden opportunity. They lost by 41 or 51.
Oh, that was nice.
Start the season, and they only lost by 4 in Lawrence on Tuesday night. Arizona defeated Iowa State earlier this week on a buzzer beater. I mean, college basketball is crazy right now. But I will actually talk about a little Super Bowl prop action. And I want everybody to know the name Jonathan Michael Batiste. And that is who is singing the national anthem.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say one thing very quickly because I obviously have 1 minute. This is one of the more beatable props. You have to look at what his body of work is. Is he exaggerating? Does he carry tunes significantly? He is pretty well known. Become familiar with him, whether you want to bet the over or under on the national anthem.
What's nice is a local boy there, Tony, also from New Orleans.
Yep.
Really, really wonderful human being as well. One of my
Which,
favorite
by the
shows.
way, is one of the things that there's been some complaint that Lil Wayne isn't involved in the Super Bowl halftime show because he's from New Orleans. Yeah.
Yeah, he got slammed. He got slighted. Yeah.
He got slighted, exactly.
He honest, and trust me, like Mark, I think on that thing that Jim sent me to be like, who are you? That questionnaire thing. Lil Wayne is one of my favorite artists, so I understand Lil Wayne a lot.
Also a big football fan.
Down in Miami
he's
here.
a huge sports fan. He's been on ESPN and holds his own. But the whole point with him is that yes, this threw him into a deep depression that he was passed over in his own home state for Kendrick Lamar, and then him and Kendrick don't get along. So there's very little reason for him to be included in any songs. So we will not.
They did make amends, Tony.
What's that?
I said Wayne did apologize to Kendrick and wished him the best. You know?
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that.
And Lil Wayne's fee for the NFL in any future negotiation has just doubled.
Yeah.
All right.
I
go for my rap gossip. I go to Mark Lawrence.
So go ahead, Mark.
Well, I have to share with you when I do a black book. It's called a black book, and the whole theme about the black book is our songs, and they're all based upon songs and derivative. And we take a song, we take a meaning, we take it to a handicap. And I did a rap song in there once, and it was really, really terrific. I'll send you that rap song that I did. I read it, and I still laugh at it, but I'll make sure I send it to you. Okay.
All right. Very good.
Cool.
All right. Speaking of college basketball and Wednesdays on college basketball night tonight, it might be a little late by the time you watch this video, so use this for some future Wednesdays. But you can catch this over, or you could have caught this on the Coffee Club email. And of course, hopefully you've already signed up for it. I have a link in the description of how you can do that. But if you're betting college basketball on Wednesdays, then you want to be betting the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, who are now on a 16-2 spread run in their last 18 games played on Wednesday night. And they are playing tonight against UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham at home.
Update, Greg. They are 24-2 to the spread. I put a real short. That's 24-2 in the last 26 games on Wednesdays. Don't ask me why, but that's their day. Wednesdays for Tulsa.
Even more.
UAB has a pro though.
What's a pro?
Like
an NBA prospect?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, the basketball team. I got you. Okay.
The stats circumvent the prospect.
Correct. They are what 12. They're 12-8. But yes, Tulsa's
not a very good team.
Their center, Yaxel Lendeboard, is a pro.
All right. Now, also, as far as in the Coffee Club email over the past week or so, sticking, of course, with the NFL, in a recent interview, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said that moving to a schedule with 2 preseason games and 18 regular season games is a logical step. I'm not sure when it will happen, but I can promise you, as someone who has been in this industry for well over 2 decades, this logical step is actually going to be a reality.
Oh, so that'll be great for player safety, right, Roger?
Yeah.
I think that's out the window, obviously.
The size of Patrick Mahomes' helmet's going to increase twice as large as it is right now.
we had 4 of the AFC's best teams play 3 games in 12 days. So
Yep.
yeah, player safety's up a little bit.
And we're just seeing this year, just like any year, the injuries.
Oh, you know what it was? I just figured it out. What Goodell's been talking about player safety all the time. He was talking about the Asian golfer Gary player safety. That's what he was talking about by player safety.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Gary
It has
Player.
to be, because he's not talking about the NFL player safety.
Gary Player.
Right. Okay. And John the Baker from Fort Lauderdale wanted to say, I read where NFL fans want to shake up the conference championship games and play one on a Saturday night, the other on Sunday night. Sounds like a good idea to me. Mark says the NFL loves putting the arm on networks, meaning it's inconceivable they would depart with their current setup. You know the saying, give liberty or give me death. The NFL would rather die than give up its playoff stranglehold. And I don't care how or what the situation is there with contracts or anything, Mark, but please, it's the one sport that hasn't gone down that road. Please, I don't need to see championship games at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I'm so sick and tired of every major sporting event ending at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. It's look, maybe when I was 20 years old, I was a little bit more because I'm up all the time and I don't care I didn't even have to go to work and I couldn't care. More the merrier. I need something to watch because I don't go to bed till 3 o'clock. But I mean, realistically, these nighttime games, these big games, it just drives me nuts. So please, the NFL and I hope you're right, Mark. I hope they never change a 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6:30 setup on championship, or even the Super Bowl starting at 6:30, which is okay, 6:45. I can live with that.
Can I come in on this?
I was going to say I was going to say quickly, I think it has to do with the cultural dynamics. Saturday night is still a night where people go out and do what they can't do during the week. Sunday night is a night when everybody stays home.
Andrew Brandt, who may or may not be your favorite or whatever, but he's pretty tuned into the business of football, said, I'm very surprised that given the ratings that the NFL hasn't split these up, and I expect to see Sunday to Monday. And again, I look at these things normally when I see them and give an instant reaction of you're a moron or yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that we will see a Sunday night championship game for one conference and a Monday night championship game for another, because you're right about the Saturday. And I think that's coming within the next 3 years.
I would say that would be okay as long as they continue to have the bye week between the Super Bowl and the championship. If they did it the following Sunday, that's an unfair advantage.
Correct, but the bye week is that game changer. Absolutely,
that's the equalizer. Yeah.
And one last thing, as far as I was looking over some of the early props here, and I noticed something about who's going to be. I guess during, I forget what it is. I think it might be either during the national anthem or one of the other songs or something like that. Who are you going to see first on TV? This guy or the other guy, this quarterback or the other quarterback. And I got to say, and I haven't noticed college football doing it, but the NFL, I don't know if this must be like something that they predetermine, because I know they're on different networks. Maybe it's me, but can they please stop showing the quarterbacks on the sidelines 500 times during the game when they're not playing? I mean, why do I have to see the guy's reaction sitting in there every single time there's a important play or something? They got to go to the guy at the quarterback on the side, sitting on the sidelines doing this. I don't get it. At least college, I was watching the college games.
Or looking at his tablet, which is
whatever.
Worse. You don't see
I was looking at the college games, and at least they were zeroing in on assistant coaches and this and that. They weren't doing that. But in the NFL, it's like every time you watch an NFL game, you'll see it here in the Super Bowl. They're going to show you Patrick Mahomes, and they're going to show you Hurst 20 times during the game, sitting there just looking like this. Like, what is that? When did that become a thing?
On that is that I don't think you have not seen, and I know this. You have not seen Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, or Josh Allen give a pre-game interview right before the game, but you do see Patrick Mahomes. It's normally with Tracy Wolfson, but I believe that is part of his routine. He likes doing it, which is crazy. And now it's crazier that he actually is so adept at making championship games that he does this, and that's become part of his thing, just like his pregame routine that the kid Rayola from Nebraska emulates.
It's part of his DNA, Tony, is what it is.
I think part of it also is that they show the crowd shots and the quarterbacks. That 25 years ago, I think, was looking to try to get a broader audience, mainly a lot more women involved. Well, hey, guess what, NFL? The women who watch NFL games right now know a lot about football, probably make up close to 40 to 45% of the overall audience. You don't need to hook them anymore with the pictures of the crowd shots and the guys on the sideline. Show the game.
One thing I'll share with you guys, because it'll be outdated otherwise. I was in Jacksonville for the Jaguars and Broncos. For the Bills and Broncos in a Bills bar, unbeknownst to me, because I had met a friend of mine there, and she's like, let's go watch the game. So I said, this is a Bills bar, but we had been there the night before and had no idea that it was a Bills bar because the Bills weren't playing. But the day that we went, the next day, like 16 hours later, they were flying flags and whatever, and it was very clearly a Bills bar. And so I'm outside, standing room only, and somebody said, "There's a Broncos fan in there. Let's kill him." and I say this because there was the whole Eagles and Commanders controversy, where Commanders fans had to go to the Hard Rock Cafe because they couldn't find a sports bar to seat them in Philadelphia. Like, what do you guys opine about that? That like in cities in America where there are there are obviously going to be Buccaneers fans in Jacksonville, or Chiefs fans in Philadelphia, that like all of a sudden they're persona non grata in different places because this has become accepted culture.
Except when the host bar fans,
like they refuse them service, Mark.
Yeah, but when they're all oiled up in the second half, that's when the tips happen. You know.
That reminds me of that new commercial they're showing with the boyfriend going to pick up his date, and he's wearing the Duke shirt, and they're all North Carolina fans, and he just closes the door and walks away. It's that kind of same thing.
Yeah,
absolutely. I don't know if you guys seen that one yet.
I haven't seen it. No.
Yeah, it's on a lot of the college basketball shows.
Unless you have a bar that's just your bar, like like you said, Tony, there are, every city you might have a group of guys that go to the bar and it becomes a team bar of another team outside the area, and they pay for it. And that's one thing. If that isn't available, I'm sorry, but if I'm a Washington Commander fan, I am not going to a bar in Philadelphia to watch the playoff game. I would have to be an idiot. That's like going to the game and sitting in the stands and not expecting there to be problems. Yeah, so you're just asking for trouble. Mark, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up, guys. Good show. Really thought we had a great time. I thought we had a lot of really good topics, a lot of really good subjects. And once again, you want to download that Playbook Super Bowl guide. It'll be available Thursday. Andy Isko's The Logical Approach newsletter. Andy, one more time, give him your email address if you will, please.
Email address is logical7, the number 7, at cox.net, logical7 at cox.net. Just give me your name, include the email address, of course, and it'll probably be out, like I say, next Wednesday or Thursday, depending upon how detailed I get with getting a lot of my prop work done.
And there's a chance, guys, we may do next week's show live. Greg's going to clear all that and make sure that it's doable. But if it happens, if you're a subscriber, you'll be notified. So hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified whether we're going to be live or not. If we're live, you can ask questions of anybody while we're doing the show. It'll be a 2-hour show we did last year on a Friday from 4 to 6 Eastern. So stay tuned to this channel, to your email, and we'll notify you whether or not we'll be live next week. And until next week, once again, this is Mark Lawrence Remind you to always to remember to bet with your head, not over it. And good luck as always.